Hey YouTube, Repo Man 64. I want to come on here. Ecru Symphony, which I'll show you her site, has done a similar video. I've been putting this together for a couple days, and she came out with hers, and I'm like, she has so much better graphics than I do. But I want to reiterate what she said, and it's important to remember that we don't know what calendar to use. We're trying to figure it out. And I've been sticking to the Enoch timeline using the equilux, and Passover has passed. We in the community that are working on this very diligently agree, for the most part, that Passover is one of the best scenarios for a rapture. There's a lot of people looking at the Feast of Trumpets. I believe that that's more of a rapture for the sleepy church. Remember, we go 3.5 years, and then the sleepy church gets called, which that happens in September. It fits perfectly. If we go now, like really soon, that event will happen for the sleepy church, the saints, and then at the very end, well, right there at the middle, Satan is going to go into the how do you call it, the worship place there in Israel, into the temple, and proclaim himself to be God. At which point the Jews will say, "Wait a second, this is not." They're going to follow it for 3.5 years. He's going to show them signs and wonders like nothing else. He's going to deceive them incredibly again. He's going to deceive them again, and they're going to follow him for 3.5 years. But at the end of 3.5 years, when he goes in there and claims himself to be God, they're going to flip out and they're going to turn on him. And at that point is when all of the attention, and that's the point where Great Tribulation begins. So I want to go through the timeline again. And at this time, what I've done differently is I've added the other dates like Ecru Symphony did. I did a similar thing. I was actually able to do step 4, which was the first sliver of the moon when the sun reaches Aries. I didn't do that step. I did 3 steps. I did the equilux, which is the one I've always looked at. I did the equinox, which is the one several others look at as being the beginning of the year. We have to know the beginning of the year. We have to know what day 1 is. You can't figure out any of this if you don't know what day 1 is. You have to start counting somewhere, and we have to figure that out. And then once we figure that out, we have to know which event to assign to the rapture. Is it indeed the resurrection of Jesus? Is it the second Passover? Is it when Jesus ascended in the sight of everyone just before Pentecost? 3 days later, Pentecost happens. Is it then? Is it the time of Pentecost because that's when the church started? Is that when the church ends? So, and I don't think the church ends. I think that at the end of the day, when we leave, they're going to have a solid, firm date. They're going to know when their time is, and I think they're going to be on fire for the Feast of Trumpets at that time, knowing that the last trump will be when they go. And so I don't feel like it's Pentecost. I think that might be when the church revitalizes, because they're going to be on fire for the Lord. They're going to be. I'm going to show you on here. There's a lady on here that has a website that she's looking at rocks that move by themselves, and she has millions of followers or millions of subscribers. And like I said before, it's very important that every Christian subscribe to as many of these YouTube channels as you can, because this word has got to get out after we leave. Saints, it's about to be your time to really begin researching and try to figure this out. You're going to go through a bad period of time, but you're going to be the greatest watchers the world has ever seen here shortly. So let me go through what I have figured out. Put my glasses on. Now I want you to notice here on April the 17th that Venus has just entered the man with the picture of water. So we were looking at this for when Jupiter went in there, but does Venus represent the bride? And now the bride is coming into the picture of water. That was something I noticed and thought was very interesting. The sun This is where it will be on March the 17th, which this is the moment where it will be in Aries. Again, I didn't figure out the first sliver of the moon after this event, but I'm guessing since we just saw the first sliver of the moon on, what was it, April the 3rd, that we'd see that, about 28 days from now, and they can start their count. I want you to notice that in the Bible it talks about the 1,260 days and the 1,290 days. From Israel becoming a nation, the end of all these things, when all of this is over with, on May 14th of 2029, as promised by the fig tree prophecy. If you count back 2,550 days, the 1,260 days, 1,290 days adds up to 2,550. We land squarely on May 21st. There is an old Jewish custom that says you can buy something, sign a contract, and return it before the 7 days and get all your money back if you decide you didn't want it. So it takes 7 days for a contract to be binding. May the 14th, 2021, Israel will become, is it 83 years old? We should fly before that, but what about that 7 days for a contract? I find it curious that it lands perfectly on May 21st of 2011. Here is Icro Symphony. I'll show you her site right after this. She's actually done all 4 columns. She did a very good job. And she even crossed off the dates that have already passed, so she has much better technology than I do as far as putting this down. So it's very, very good work that she did. And I would go to subscribe to her. She's at almost 3,000 subscribers. She should be at 1 million subscribers, honestly, because this type of information that she does, this work that she does, needs to be out there after the rapture. That is one of the most important things I personally think needs to happen now before we fly, because once we fly, we're going to be standing in heaven, and we're going to be like, man, if I look, they're looking at that YouTube and they're trying to learn, and if more of us had liked the YouTube channels, perhaps there'd be more information out there for them. I don't think personally that all this information is not just going to be a knockdown brawl as soon as we leave. I think it's just going to be people trying to figure out what happened. This was me 11 years ago. Harold Camping called out May 21st of 2011. I just showed you that 7 days for a contract from May 14th, 1948, coming up here to May 14th, 2022, plus 7 days for the contract would lead us to May 21st. So I looked up what 11 means. The meaning of the number 11 is important in that it can symbolize disorder, chaos, and judgment. In the Bible, 11 is used 24 times, and 11th can be found 19 times. Coming after 10, which represents law and responsibility, 11 represents the opposite, which is the irresponsibility of breaking the law, which brings disorder and judgment. So 11 years later, exactly 11 years later, once we're gone, there is no holding back of the Antichrist anymore. We will be gone. We won't be here to hold him back anymore. He'll have free reign on this planet. And I just find it crazy how exactly 11 years ago Harold Camping called this out. So we are all parts of the body, all of us. I could literally sit here and go to one of the 140 people that I subscribe to and assign them a part of the body, like Ken Potter's the brain. He's very smart, very intelligent, and very well spoken. Wackadoodle Samoan's fantastic. He has the greatest imagination of anybody I've seen. He really does. Dr. Barry, it's funny. He's got a wonderful sense of humor. Great research that he does, and I could go on and on. Icro Symphony is able to put all this down in a fashion to where it's easy to understand, hopefully easier than what I could put down. And then like the Cataclysm Tony early, this guy he's the eyes. He keeps seeing things that I've seen a couple things, but he keeps seeing things revealed to him all the time. Like I said last video, a lot of these things that are revealed to us are love letters from God saying, hang in there. Here's a little feather or, a fish that your electronic mower mowed into the ground. I mean, who would have thought that could possibly happen? So each one of us, each part of us, imagine one of these parts missing. The rest of the body would break down, but we don't. We are created by God. We carry God's DNA. We were created in the image of God, and most of us need to start acting in that way. And when we were created, and then we chose Satan's side because Satan was so jealous that we were actually created in the image of God, and that we carry God's DNA. His very name is written in our DNA, and we just don't act like it. Sometimes when you look at another human being, I don't care where they're from, look past what they look like and look right into their DNA and notice that they are created by God. God loves them very much. Every single one of us, no matter where we're from, no matter what language we speak, we are the children of God, created by God, in God's image. And each one of us needs to recognize that. So it would be literally impossible to hate someone or be angry with someone because they're not like you, because you're hating God, and you just simply can't do that. So just pay attention to these different parts, and you could almost assign each watcher to a different part. It's like the Bible says we are all a part of the body. Just because I see certain things in a timeline, and then somebody else sees things in around it, you can't go, well, they're wrong just because you don't see it. You're not a part of that part of the body. You're a part of another part of the body. So always remember that. I did this right here. Symphonies is much nicer than mine, but what I did down here was, number one represents the equilux. That's what I've always looked at. I decided the other day to go ahead and try to figure this out. You can see all the scratching and everything else as I tried to figure it out. I think I got it correct, but somebody might notice I don't. The second line item is going to be the equinox, which happens 4 days later. The equilux happens on March the 16th. I didn't write it down. The equinox happens on March the 20th, and the sliver of the moon after the equinox happens on April the 3rd. So the first day that you count will be the next day. So March the 17th is the first day. Even though the equinox happened on March 16th, the first day is March the 17th. Equinox happened on the 20th, the first day is March the 21st. The sliver of the new moon happened on April the 3rd, but the first day is April the 4th. Now, every single one of these dates is passed. We go forward to Lazarus being resurrected, okay? On the equinox, it happened on March the 20th. On the equinox, it happened on March the 24th. And on the first sliver of the moon after the equinox, it happens on April the 7th. All of these dates have passed. Over here, Nisan 8. I want to show you something here real quick also. This is driving me nuts. The 10th, Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday, the day that Jesus rode into town on a donkey triumphantly as they yelled, Hosanna in the highest, right? 7 days later, this is Gregorian now, 7 days later, Easter. This is the day Jesus rises. So, if Jesus rises here, how does, this seems like it would be a day off. If he rides into town and then spends 4 days being held as a sacrificial lamb and then is crucified on a day, I guess it would fit. I guess it would fit because if this is a triumphal entry, 4 days later he is crucified and 3 days later he rises. So yeah, I guess it would fit. April the 17th. So I forgot about the 3 days. So April the 17th is Resurrection Day. So that would actually work on the Gregorian calendar. And it's something new I'm working on, so I'm trying to figure it out. But let me go back to the calendar here, or the timeline. Now, this is the meal that Lazarus has with Mary, who represents the bride, Martha, who represents the saint, and Lazarus representing the dead rising first. This event already passed on the equinox, March 24th. This event already passed on the equinox of March the 28th. But it is the 10th. April the 11th, tomorrow, on the first sliver of the moon, after the equinox. I believe this is the timeline that Dr. Berry follows. I don't want to, state for certain, but I believe that's the one. I took time out to figure out where their first day of the year is showing up, and if I am correct, then March 11th is the day that Jesus had a meal with these three. 2 days later, Jesus rides a donkey into Jerusalem. He does this on Nisan 10, which is March the 26th on the equinox. Down here, that's March 30th on the equinox. This has already passed. The triumphant entry for the first sliver of the moon after the equinox will be April 13th. That's 3 days from now. If we're going to follow the first sliver of the moon, then that's what we would be looking forward to. Again, remember what I said. We just don't know which calendar to follow. We don't know if this is the event that we're supposed to look at. But if it is Passover that we're supposed to look at, then one of these calendars are going to prove correct. And how do I know that? We're going to get, I believe, some kind of a message stating which calendar we're following. And it might be the Gregorian calendar, simply because we've been on the Gregorian calendar for quite some time. And on the Gregorian calendar, Israel did become a nation on May 14th of 1948. And on May 14th of 2022, Israel will turn 74 years old, making it very difficult for a 7-year tribulation to happen before all these things come to an end on May 14th of 2029. Just before May 13th, just before Israel turns 81, because all these things were promised to happen while they were still 80. You are 80 years old for a year before you turn 81. You could be 80 years old in 1 month, 80 years old in 6 months, 80 years old in 11 months and 3 weeks. If you pass away at 80 years old, 11 months and 3 weeks, on your gravestone they will say you were 80. The reason they'll say that is because you are. You're still 80 until you turn 81. So we're still within the window of this happening. Here we have the resurrection. I showed the resurrection on April the 2nd on the equinox, April the 6th on the equinox timeline, and April the 20th on the first sliver of the moon. So you can see the 2 dates have already passed for the resurrection. This would be the highest probability of our escape, personally, as I personally view it. When the equinox passed, I began looking at the first sliver of the moon after the equinox, and we come to April the 20th, which is 10 days from today, Resurrection Day. April the 20th, according to that, but over here we have April the 17th as Resurrection Day, because they always try to line it up on a Sunday. So they line it up on a Sunday, and then it's never accurate because the Gregorian calendar changes every year. The days stay the same on the Enoch calendar. And here's another thing. All these calendars, I have 3 on here, and there's a 4th one where the sun reaches Aries, the first sliver of the moon after the sun reaches Aries. All these calendars, they all might be in play. And the reason I say that is maybe the Gregorian calendar is for the Gentile. It is a Gentile calendar. Maybe that's the one we're supposed to be watching for the return. And then the Enoch calendar might be for the next group, and then the first sliver of the moon after the equinox might be for the final group, and then even the final group of when the millennium is set up. We don't know the exact date of that thing, and it says it in Matthew, I think it's 24:36, where the end of all these things, even the end of the millennium, nobody really knows the day or the hour. So we keep watching. So which calendar? And again, I think these things will be revealed. God has not left us, but and not spoken directly. Nobody's gotten spoke directly to yet and says, hey, this is when it's going to happen. Nobody can come on here and say, God told me this is when it's going to happen. It hasn't happened yet. God did all he was going to do. He said it is finished, and it is finished until he comes back and claims his bride. So let me keep going on with this. The very next day we have is Thomas in the upper room. This happens on April the 9th on the equinox, which passed yesterday. On the equinox, now you see line 2 comes into play again, stays in play here after this, until it doesn't. Line 2 is the equinox, April the 13th, Thomas in the upper room. And April the 27th for the first sliver of the moon after the equinox. And then the second Passover, that's kind of a high watch day as well. They're saying that Jesus fulfilled the first Passover and that the second Passover will be when he raptures us out of here. Still landing before May the 14th, except for on the Gregorian calendar. April the 29th is second Passover on the equinox, starting the year on March 17th. Second Passover is May 3rd, starting the year on March 20th, would be May 3rd, the second Passover. And starting the year on the first sliver of the moon after the equinox will be May 17th, which is 3 days after Israel becomes a nation. I stopped there. I could have done it. I mean, really, I don't like even thinking about going past May 14th. Except for those 7 days. Those 7 days have always plagued me and called to my attention. But except for those 7 days, we could go to May 21st as part of it's over with on May 14th. We're all notified this is going to happen. We take a 7-day cleansing process that we have to go through. There is a cleansing, just like when Mary and Martha buried Lazarus. They had the meal with Jesus on the 8th day. They had 7 days. They couldn't eat with Jesus because they were unclean. But on the 8th day, they were clean, and Jesus ate with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus because they had buried Lazarus. And exactly 8 days later, they had a meal with him. So keep watching. Just keep watching. This is getting exciting. I'm getting emails and notes everywhere of people telling me, hey, this is happening and that's happening. And it's incredible. It's incredible. The lawnmower thing, I mean, who would have thought of that? The lawnmower actually etched out a picture of a fish in his yard. I mean, that's amazing. His name's Gino, and he sent me some stuff, some pictures of his life. I don't know how old he is, but he's older. I think he's older than I am, and he's led quite a life. Thank you, Gina, for that. And Gina with her feathers, I was like, Gina, that's kind of cool. So I get a little notes or messages, love notes, as I like to call them. I think you all get them in one form or another. Some of you see numbers just popping up, 117, 117. You know, it's amazing how that happens. I see timelines and numbers. Whenever I hear a number, it pops into my head how it falls into a timeline. So that's just how my brain works. And so we're all part of the body, and we all view this differently. I don't discount anybody. I don't discount anyone, because everyone is a beautiful part of this body, and everyone's function is slightly different and is equally important. You know, there's people out there street preaching. I couldn't do that. I like stopping and videoing them and talking with them and telling them they're doing a good job, but it's not me. I couldn't do that. But that's their thing. That's what they do. In one form or another, we all have a responsibility to warn the saints in one form or another. I'm not. I don't know what happened to my picture here. Hold on a second. I wanted to show you guys something. I think I lost it. Ecru Symphony. You gotta go subscribe to her channel. I did lose it. There it is. Physics Girl. She she she's a physics girl, and she's nothing wrong with her. She has a YouTube doing things. The world does weird, like these rocks seem to move themselves across this desert, but it turns out it freezes and the rocks move because they're on an incline, and they just simply slide down the ice. And every so often, every few years, the rock slide. You can go watch it yourself, but I want you to notice Physics Girl has 2.28 million subscribers. If if and when the rapture happens and the bride is gone, when I don't know, but when it happens, what do you think Physics Girl is going to be able to do? She's in the world. She understands the world. Do you think Physics Girl will have any contribution whatsoever to the bride? So, like I said before, like, comment, share, and subscribe these videos. Find your favorite YouTuber. Doesn't have to be me, anybody, and increase their numbers. I'd like to see, who's Dr. Barry Oz, one of my favorite. Wackadoodle Samoan's coming back. He's coming back to YouTube here shortly, and look forward to his videos because he looks at Stellarium, and he has a very imaginative mind, and I like watching him. He's funny. And so Ecru Symphony, go subscribe to hers. I'm not trying to get more subscribers. I'm saying that if Physics Girl can have over 2 million subscribers, we need to get our subscribership up so that these videos are available when we're gone to the saints. Don't get to heaven and say, all I had to do was like a video and I could have helped send out the message after we were gone. Like and comment on these and share and subscribe to these videos. Not for me, to help the saints later on. Go find your favorite person. I don't know who it is. Cataclysm Tony Early. Go follow him. Ken Potter. George from Return of the King. There's just so many of them. Watchwoman 65. She has a lot, but she doesn't have a million. There's so many of them. I can't even begin to think of them all. Maybe I should have made a list. That's a lot, though. 140 that I follow, because I want to make sure that somebody stumbles across my video, they can see all of the other people that I follow, and they can jump in there, because they're going to. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be absolutely crazy when we're gone, because they're going to be just starving for information, and hopefully we've left a good enough trail for them after we're gone that they can figure this out. So anyway, go to a quiet place. And I tell you this to the saints after we're gone. Saints, please go to a quiet place. You've seen all these people disappear. They're gone. And the world is giving you a sorry explanation as to what happened to them. Don't listen. Come to these videos, watch them. There's so many wonderful people out here. I'd like to see every single one of us make a video strictly to the saints and say, hey, this is what happened, and this is what you need to watch out for. Most of the bride that I've spoken to has left notes in their house or USB drives, food, water to help out during that period of time, because God told us the greatest command was to love God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul, and your neighbor too. That means your neighbor is the saint, and you need to love them enough to warn them and get them prepared. They might not listen right now, but the second this thing happens, they need to have as much information as possible to make a good choice so that they can go to a quiet place by themselves. Nobody needs to know, and they don't need to tell anybody, and accept the Lord into their heart, because their day will be coming 3.5 years later or 7 years later. So anyway, Repo Man 64. We'll chat with you later.